to me like real softly, but she was like right up in my ear, you know. So the whole time, I'm just waiting for her to like stick her tongue in my ear hole or something. The way she was talking,
What the fuck
I was like,
dream are
man,
you
this.
having? This is
I
getting
was like,
spicy.
I was like, man, this is pretty fucking relaxing. That's all I could think of.
What
So
the fuck?
I don't know why, man. I just felt like I was floating on a cloud there. I was like, man, I've never felt so comfortable before.
I feel so alive. Remember that song?
Oh yeah, it didn't make any sense, but yeah, like I was like, man, that was an amazing nap I just had.
So how about this, right? So when I was younger, right? um, I won't. I promise it won't get explicit.
Mhm.
But it was my first nocturnal emission. It wasn't. It wasn't that deep.
Okay.
But like, so anyway, this is back in the '90s. I fell asleep with one of those not 1-900 commercials, right? You know,
Mhm.
I don't know what it was, an infomercial I was watching. I don't know, scrubbing floors or the patio shit, right? But anyway, I fell asleep, and it must have been that time where they start playing it while I was sleeping.
Mhm.
So I remember it was like a gym room, you know what I mean? And it was just these three naked chicks in the shower, right? And they're looking at me, and they're doing like the little finger, come here shit.
Yeah.
So I was like, fucking dork. I was like, who me? And it was like, they didn't say anything. Come here. So I slowly, I think, how old was I? I was like 10. So they slowly got there. I mean, I slowly got there, right? And then they looked at each other, and then all looked at me in unison, and then their mouths opened up, and a vacuum sound came out. So they're just like, "Ooh." So I was like, what the fuck? And then I woke up. My mom is vacuuming in my fucking room. I was like, what the fuck? Why are you in my room vacuuming? It was out of all places. Like that's fucking rude as shit. You see
Surprise.
some, you see she does that. So anyway, so welcome to the gaming pulpit. This is your host, All Things Sony. I have my best friend in the room here, and we're gonna be talking about not nocturnal emissions, but some good news. The
I
first
don't
thing,
know.
what else would it be new? But the first thing I want to talk about is apparently Sony's strategy. I'm sure that's been going around, and there's been a lot of salty fanboys, and I mean Sony Ponies, PlayStation fanboys. I mean, I've warned about this before. I explicitly told you guys, do not get comfortable with using the exclusive narrative to make fun of Xbox fans. I told you guys that. There's going to be a time when they're going to put more than just Horizon Zero Dawn on there. And there's a good reason why they decided to do that. And I'm going to read to you, Terry, as well, what they said.
Okay.
But beforehand, because there's another thing they said. They said they're looking to acquire more studios. So, that being said, and I almost forgot where the fuck is my other phone. Fucking bitch. Shit. But anyway, the first thing I wanted to kind of state is that, well, they are going to try to acquire new studios. That's the first thing that I did notice that they did say. So I'm like, yay, that's great. We all knew this, but it comes to my attention. I'm thinking here, there were some rumors about Sony purchasing Silent Hill IP, Metal Gear Solid IP, and I know that's IP versus, you know, a whole studio, but they're looking to strengthen. I'll read exactly what they said. To strengthen their portfolio. One of the reasons why is because they would have start putting more games on the PC. So there's a couple of things to kind of know. You got to remember that the SSD requirements are until next year will be kind of exclusive to the next generation consoles, Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. So that's going to limit them from just throwing anything on there. That's number one. I believe World of Warcraft, the newest update too, requires the SSD, and now requires it. So this is going to be the new wave. Once it gets going, expect to see more exclusives. Number two, um, on my feed there was a Horizon Zero Dawn playthrough on the PC. I was kind of bored. I was like looking at it. I wanted to see what it would look like on at 60 frames a second or close to it because the patch is still kind of not up to snuff. And a guy that was playing it, he's pretty big too. I think he had like 500,000 subscribers. He was so enthralled with the game. Like he was so excited. He was like, I mean, he was super impressed. And yes, the Horizon Zero Dawn probably only sold about 200,000 copies, but don't forget the importance of word of mouth. So the strategy is definitely there. Now I'm going to read to you what Sony has said regarding that. To reinforce content IP, Sony Entertainment or Interactive Entertainment will accelerate the enhancement and rollout of its portfolio of exclusive PlayStation titles. As a result of cooperation with the in-house development and partnered companies, sell-through of the PS4 software titles continues to grow. And the intention is to further enhance the lineup with compelling content. Along with that, further growth and recurrent income will be achieved through various network enhancements, network service enhancements, and reinforcing content IP so that the consumers select PlayStation as their platform of choice. Now, they said PlayStation. They didn't say a console. Targeted outcomes include growth in active users, stronger retention, and a shorter cash conversion cycle, from which expanded cash flow will be expected. We will explore expanding our first-party titles to the PC platform in order to promote further growth of our profitability. Now, I know I said something about what they're going to do for the IPs. I want to get that out the way, and then I'm going to ask you what's going on. The other thing I want to say here, I don't know if this is pertinent. I'm trying to read this as fast as possible. In executing these strategies, greater emphasis will be placed on user engagement. SIE plans to provide content for a variety of games, genres, and formats, and make advancements in unique and immersive interaction or interactive experience such as VR. At the same time, SIE aims to create a better user experience, improve usability, and strengthen its use of data analysis, which is, all this AI shit. Making the best use of new and existing partnerships while driving growth with will be important in achieving further expansion and scale through maintaining the momentum of the ecosystem that the PS4 built up to now. We will promote a smooth transition to PS5. Now here's the good stuff. Game titles and the primary content IP for the games and services or network services. First party titles developed and sold by the platform owner are particularly important as content IP for future value creation and earnings. In addition to improving the personal and work environment in its own studios, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to invest in and acquire firms with abundance of creativity and cutting-edge technologies to build up worldwide studios in association with first-party title production studios. So, with all that being said, they mentioned about The Last of Us, God of War, Spider-Man as being like your 10-foot or 10 pole. I don't know, but their flagship IPs. What do you guys say about all that, man? I am curious. This is the first time you're hearing this. This was an investors meeting, by the way. So, A, what do you think about titles going to the PC? And B, what do you think about them expanding the PlayStation first-party studios?
Well, to sum it up, I look at it as this is essentially
Sex.
the phase. This is essentially the same phase that TV services had to go through. You know,
Netflix, by the way, if you don't
you
know.
know, Netflix, of course, was the first big one, but of course, you've had many competitors: Amazon, uh, TV services. You got Hulu Plus, Roku. I mean, there's many more, right? But the point is that, of course, they kind of realized that, kind of one of the best or kind of one of the strategies to appeal people to use their service is what? Have these exclusive TV shows that you can only get, if you subscribe to their service, obviously. Um,
Well, I
And
wouldn't
I
say
believe,
this. How would people know about these exclusive contents if you're stuck in an ecosystem? So there's that. Continue,
but
please.
yeah, I mean, it's not a critique. It's just a what I'm saying is more or less just an observation. It makes sense that kind of if you kind of look at current gen, I think next gen infrastructure and such, like things are consoles and ultimately personal computers, they're kind of becoming a bit more uniform. They're not exactly the same, but they're within the ballpark to where it's reasonable and it's profitable to at some point take that Sony first party studio exclusive title and eventually port it over to the PC. Obviously, it's not going to go to the Xbox because that's their direct competitor, but personal computers is not that's not a company in and of itself. So it's they can safely kind of do that, and of course, they have to figure out, they're gonna put it on Steam or Epic Game Store, but
They've been working with Epic Games. Somebody made that observation. I don't know if they'll ever make a Sony storefront. Maybe, I don't know. But to me, it looks like it's more work than what it's worth.
yeah,
And it strengthens the partnership of Epic Games and their engine and them sharing technologies,
yeah,
things like that.
I'm not sure how all that works, but I think it would just probably be more cost prohibitive to try and compete with those type of market venues.
Steam,
Yeah.
Microsoft. Don't forget, Microsoft has their own, and it's not doing well. So there's that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Um, no one wants to download 5 different launchers for games on the PC. Speaking of which, I said this before, and I'll say this again. And we're going to move on to our next subject, which is the PlayStation 5 ray tracing capabilities. So, um, flat out, Digital Foundry had a video about Horizon Zero Dawn and its issues with drivers and PC I'm sorry, PCI fucking motherboard, all this other shit that was going on that was making the transition like or the port just a shitty experience. I don't know why. Maybe and the only thing I can surmise is that people want that narrative and argument that Xbox are idiots for supporting that because they're putting their games out everywhere. What you guys need to understand is that it's not that Microsoft is putting their games out everywhere. The problem here is that they're putting out games that are not great. The quality is shit. That's the real big problem. But I know it's fun to be on social media and on game forums and laugh at somebody, and the human psyche is already naturally competitive. But I'm telling you, you better drop it. Don't. You're gonna lose your exclusivity argument. I promise you that. The only thing you can say is fucking quality. You know what I mean? Number two, Sony is not going to give up that revenue that they've made off the PlayStation Store. That's never going to happen unless it stops selling the money. You guys are not looking at the bigger picture. Yes, they only sold 200,000 copies of Horizon Zero Dawn within 2 months or a month of its release. Yeah, but word of mouth is a strong thing. This guy was absolutely floored with Horizon Zero Dawn. Whether you think it's boring, Horizon Zero bore, or whatever the fuck you call it, he enjoyed it. And that's not an experience that you typically get on a PC. You don't get that type of quality. A lot of people want to sit there and say it's clones of Ubisoft games. Obviously, it's not because is where it's at. Same thing with God of War, etc., etc. All this complaints about PlayStation games are just single player experiences, story driven games, it's one and done, and but yet at the same time, people always talk about it. They always have Sony's exclusives in their mouths. I'm telling you right now, you better drop it. I'm not. I'll say this before. I'll say it again. I'm not a fanboy. I like Sony shit, but I'm not a fanboy to that extent where I'm just blinded by it. I'm just not gonna buy a PS5. I'm gonna buy a PC. And what, nigga? Wait for fucking 3 years for a game? That's what you're gonna do? Do me a favor and do that, by the way, like they say on Twitter, so I can get my copy of my PlayStation 5. Like, don't buy it. Like, legit, stick to your word. So if you're not going to buy that PlayStation 5, I'll be able to get that shit. Stick to your word. So our next topic is going to be talking about the Ratchet and Clank reveal that Jeff Keighley basically ushered, and it was basically a reiteration of the um, the PlayStation conference demo, a little bit longer and a little bit more well put together, a little bit more seamless. Um, but it caused a lot of shit. It caused a lot of issues. There was a lot of fucking Xbox that were really pissed off about how people were just really like, this is a next generation experience. This is like super next gen right now. And then that's when you got the Xbox was like, oh, it's not even a realistic game. It's not even an open world game. It's like all this scrutiny, all this comparing the footage from the PlayStation 5 meeting with this one to see if it was a downgrade or not. But yet you didn't even check. You didn't even do all this scrutiny with the Halo 5 or whatever the fuck Halo Infinite reveal. None of that was scrutinized, but you scrutinized PlayStation shit. But I digress. The debacle, or the hubbub, I should say, was about, how supposedly is before this whole Jeff Keighley thing happened, the PlayStation 5 is not really a ray tracing machine. It's based off of RDNA 1.5, which doesn't really have ray tracing, but it does. A lot of stupid rumors just kept cropping up, just so fucking annoying. Sony AMD has already said that it is a fucking RDNA 2. It has ray tracing, and I guess a lot of people are like, well, the more compute units you have in your GPU, the better it is because ray tracing is a parallel processing system. The more processors you have in parallel, the better it is. So my question is, where's the actual footage of Xbox Series X games that was using ray tracing? Because they have yet to show that. Everything that they showed, as a matter of fact, most of the things, 98% of the things that they showed was on fucking, on a PC based off of the hardware specs of the Series X, which is like really curious. They showed their console first, so it's like, but you don't have any like hardware yet. Like, what's going on? It just kind of draws suspicion. But the biggest talk was the PlayStation 5 has 36 CUs, compute units, on its GPU, and the Xbox Series X um, has 52. There was a hot chips development deep dive for the hardware of the Xbox Series X. And all of the Xbox got like super excited because they misread some numbers, thinking that the ray tracing capabilities rivaled $1,000 GPU somehow. So I don't know what conclusion they drew from that. Everyone knows that AMD, the way that they process information or the way that they count their information is different from NVIDIA's. NVIDIA's has been known to have a lower teraflop count, but yet outpaced them. So there's something else going on. Regardless, people thought that the PlayStation 5 is not capable of ray tracing at all. And the developer of Ratchet and Clank Spider-Man said it straight. Essentially, he basically said this: it will be native 4K 30 frames per second with ray tracing. Not only that, they have another mode, which I kind of figured was going to be the case for this generation, or the new generation. There's going to be a temporal 4K reconstruction, the same reconstruction they had with Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man, up to 4K and with 60 frames per second, and ray tracing. They say that Ratchet and Clank's fur is ray trace, also is affected by wind. There's no loading times, and they showed all this in fucking real time. Not only that, but they showed with the Jeff Keighley event, it was better effects, better ray tracing effects, more objects reflected, which is pretty cool. And if you don't know, ray tracing is effective based off of surfaces. So the more surfaces you have, or the more triangles you have, the more difficult it is to do the ray tracing, because the lights have to bounce off of every surface. And here they are, regardless if it's a cartoony game or not, light physics is still light physics regardless. You know what I mean? If it was a cartoon, if cartoon art style was a thing, Pixar movies would have been readily available on this generation and previous. So ray tracing is a complicated situation. It's a complicated system. And that's pretty much it. He stated that, this is the developer for Ratchet and Clank. He stated, it was like, listen, ray tracing, I mean not ray tracing, 4K is almost like a wasted resource because you're not getting 4K 60 frames per second and ray tracing at the same time. That's not going to happen. Um, but what they can do is reconstruction techniques. The same DSLL with AI reconstruction, whatever the reconstruction method is, it's still a thing where it alleviates the computational hit that you get with 4K, and you don't really notice a difference. And I think Sony should be commended by actually pioneering the reconstruction method because they kind of knew that they're not going to get up there. That's just not how it's going to be. What is your take on all this?
Uh, well, I think in terms of a digital foundry, I think that's just a bunch of rigmarole. Um, ray tracing is something that the technique has been around for a couple of years. I remember NVIDIA's when they had their first demo. What was it, like 2016 or something? So I mean the technique has been around. And it is future tech in that eventually, there will come a point in time where basically everyone's going to be using it because, in terms of development time, there's a lot of hurdles that kind of technique can overcome, and it makes the lighting look great, but in terms of the resource cost of people working on that is going to be less than how modern lighting techniques work. But it's more or less a future technology. If you look at things like Doom 3 that came out back in the day, or Crisis, the first Crisis, Half-Life 2 with the Havoc engine and the physics it was capable of, all those bells and whistles, there were a select few people that could run it on the rigs, but even then they still couldn't really take the frame rate or the resolution too high, without just stressing out their video graphics card. So I think something like Ratchet and Clank, there may be some intermediate use of ray tracing throughout the generation, but it's very demanding to have something run at 4K and at 60 frames and have ray tracing like that. That just requires an extreme amount of hardware power that's just not available yet, or it's just not going to be commonplace until the future. I'll use one more example. You look at megatextures, right? Megatextures was a great idea. It still is a cool idea in terms of what you can do with it. Unfortunately, megatextures, what's the major drawback? It takes up a lot of freaking space, and it's also going to take a lot of time on the side of like human resources, because you have to, kind of make every that whole texture unique and all kinds of stuff. And it's a great idea. It's going to add overall more graphical fidelity to games, at some point, but it's just too taxing. It's too time consuming at the time. It's a cool idea, but it just, I think Rage, the first Rage game, I think uncompressed was like 2 terabytes or something. That's how much space it took up. So it's just really just something to get clicks on a video to stir shit up. I
Yeah,
don't think
because a
those
lot of
guys
people
just
don't. A lot of
understand
people,
how
people give them too much
concerning
credit.
that is in terms of resources.
People give them too much credit in terms of like what they're doing, like way too much credit. None of them are computer engineers. I think one
Also,
person.
one more thing I'll say real quick, and then I'll be done. In that, just because a game has all these cool graphical bells and whistles, that doesn't necessarily mean the game is going to be enjoyable. I think you can look at a game like Dead Space, the first one. That lighting system is pretty rough, but it is used so effectively. The tools that they have, that the atmosphere in that game is so fucking incredible. And just really kind of captivates the player. That talent of that development team, what they were able to do, trumps any kind of technological bells and whistles they can apply, right? So I just have a personal bone to pick with people that they put so much emphasis on graphical fidelity and just forget whether or not the game's actually going to be worth playing in the first place. But that's all I got.
Well, the whole thing is to like most people are not going to notice the immediate effects of ray tracing. You would have to really pixel peep and do all this other shit and side by sides and things like that to really
Mm.
see the difference of what ray tracing is going to do. If you don't know, global illumination is the simulation of bouncing of light, such as if you go outside on a sunny day with a white piece of paper and the tennis ball, you can see the light bouncing off of the tennis ball, and there will be some bleeding, green bleeding, light bleeding on the paper. A lot of this stuff, because we're living in the real world, it's natural for the eye, so we don't bat an eye to it. But in the video game world, it may not do it. And what they did to simulate global illumination, or radiosity is what you would call it, that phenomenon of light bouncing, is you create these invisible light probes that get brighter, um, or it samples your texture or color, um, to give an illusion, because it takes the color of your environment or whatever it is, and this is a very rudimentary, simplistic way of saying it, and then it tries to convert it into light, and then it emits the light to give an illusion of the light's bouncing. Developers have to go in and create these light probes and all these the invisible lights all around to make that work, which is like, it's time consuming and taxing, versus when you have ray tracing, to flip a switch and it does it for you. You know what I mean? Um, so it's really made for developers, and they don't have to make these cube maps, which are basically the environment, which is having a 360 picture taken and then it's wrapped around a shiny image or whatever the case is. It's basically like an invisible environment that you can't see. It's very simplistic, and it gives the illusion of reflections, but they can never do reflections, or they do light screen space reflections as well, which it only takes what is into account on the screen. So if it's out of the screen, it starts to fall apart, the effect. So to me, it'll make things look more natural, but it makes it easier for the developers, so they don't have to create these cube maps and things won't look weird. You know what I mean? Or they don't have to do extra work and shit like that. But if you think that ray tracing is going to be like, you know, um, this revolutionary type thing, I mean, it isn't. So I'll make things look more natural, basically. I mean, the bottom line is that fucking supercomputers have an issue doing ray tracing. As it is. It's not an easy thing, and to do it in real time and at 60 frames a second is totally unrealistic. You're gonna have to fake some things. It's just that's how it's gonna be. But that's all I got for you today. Let me know in the comments what you liked or disliked about the video, and if you liked it, a sub would be appreciated. Don't forget to like the video if you do like the content. It really helps the visibility of this video on YouTube. But until then, toodaloo.